Welcome to Brainstorm 9000.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17,
Greetings,
18, 19.
brains of the internet, and welcome to Dr. Schultz counting a lot of numbers for some reason. What are you doing?
Hi. So they call me Dr. Schultz. I'm counting a number of authors for an amazing scientific paper published in the Science magazine on April 12, 2019. So it's like a few days ago.
Oh, wow, yeah.
I let you read the...
Like literally a couple days ago.
The name, yeah.
All right, the name is Sustained Rescue of Prefrontal Circuit Dysfunction by Antidepressant-Induced Spine Formation.
Right.
I don't know what that means.
I don't think anybody knows what it means except for me. And I'm going to enlighten you guys because it's closely related to the subject of our conversation, which is ketamine.
Ketamine therapy, not ketamine like the K-hole, like the street drug, like the drug from Party Monster.
So that is a part of human life that I've heard of, but can you enlighten me?
Okay, so I'm not an expert,
Right.
but I'll tell you what I know.
Right.
So on the street, it's called Special K. So what I had always heard is that ketamine is a horse tranquilizer.
Yeah, that's how they used to call it.
And that I'll get to it later, but I was talking to people who've like done it recently, and I'm like, I've never seen this around before.
Right.
But people, I think, smoke it. People come up with all kinds of ways to take it.
Right.
But then it's supposed to produce like a dissociating effect, and a lot of people talk about falling into a K-hole, which is supposed to be like where you feel like you're separated from your body and like you're, like separated from reality. And I mainly know about this drug because it was the drug of choice of Michael Alec and James St. James.
If I knew who they were, that would be very enlightening. Who are these people?
Okay, so they're from the movie Party Monster, which is based on a true story.
Right.
So James St. James and Michael Alec, they were club kids in the early 90s.
Right.
So they were paid to like dress up fabulously and go to parties. And according to what James St. James wrote, they did a lot of K.
Interesting.
So that's the illicit side of ketamine.
Well, what I know is that ketamine has been used since 1970, 197, when it was approved by the FDA for brief anesthesia. It causes what is called a dissociative state, which is the reason people do it, people who want to get high, because they dissociate and feels kind of cool probably.
Right.
But it's being used especially for anesthesia in children, because apparently for children it's easier to tolerate being dissociated. And what happens is that a person has a partial or a full awareness of what's going on, but kind of like is not participating in the activity. So while somebody is performing brief surgery on somebody, this person either, it's hard to tell, either just doesn't know what's going on or doesn't remember what went on. I've seen children being operated for very small procedures, outpatient, even in the emergency room, when they need to remove something quickly with ketamine use, and they really don't feel anything.
Oh.
I also, another huge experience of mine, I worked in research at Columbia University in neuroendocrinology with rhesus monkeys, and we also gave them ketamine for certain procedures. I just remembered that they were apparently getting high.
Oh.
And then coming off of ketamine, which was given to them IV, of course, I remember a terrible drooling. Do people drool after ketamine nowadays?
I don't know. Maybe it depends on how much you give them.
Right. So ketamine was discovered as a substance of medicinal use in the United States in one of the labs. And it's a very, very popular medication that actually until 1999 wasn't even regulated by the FDA as a substance that has to be prescribed, like a controlled substance. So it was easier to buy.
Sometimes I wish I were alive in like the 20s when there was just like morphine at the corner store.
Yes.
What a world.
So we are talking in this podcast about ketamine for a few reasons. One of them is that one of us had an experience with it. The other reason is that the other person probably will need ketamine by the end of this podcast. And
Yes.
you'll find out.
Can you guess who's who?
I know.
I'm asking the audience to guess.
Yes. So call us, but we don't have a number for you to call, and email us, but we are not going to be able
Yeah,
to
just
read your emails.
don't even bother.
Right.
You can't do it.
Right. Forget about it.
Forget about it.
So, master of all the McMasters, what's up? What's the story with ketamine?
Oh, should I talk about my experience?
I guess so.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So, spoiler, I'm the person who's had an experience with ketamine,
Yeah.
which is why we wanted to talk about it today. So, I've been like very open, throughout our recordings of Brainstorm 9000
Yes.
about my mental health issues. I have a history of depression and anxiety. I, over the years, have taken a lot of different medications and had, like therapy here and there, like different people. So I've done a lot of things. And recently, I guess a few months ago, my depression came back with a vengeance
Right.
and got very, very bad. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know what to do. I talked to my doctor. I increased my meds.
Right.
I changed things up a little bit. And it was still just awful. It was like debilitating.
Right.
Like I couldn't do anything. I just didn't care.
Right.
It was awful. And I remembered that, because I was thinking, okay, like what, is there anything else I can do? Because like, it seems like meds don't work for me. Like I've tried SSRIs.
Right.
I've tried, the Wellbutrin family of drugs. I've tried a lot of different things.
Well, I guess a head transplant is not an option, right?
Yeah.
Because it's still your head.
I would be okay with that.
But it's still your head, though.
Yeah. Oh, damn it. So I remembered that we had done a little bit of research about ketamine therapy a while ago because we were thinking about doing an episode about it.
Yes.
So I started Googling it, and basically I came across a lot of testimonials and a lot of articles written by people who tried it. And it was just like astonishing.
Yes.
The testimonials that I read, from various places on the internet, it was like every one, like the before picture sounded like me. Mm-hmm. And the after picture that they described sounded impossible. All of them said pretty much like, I've tried everything. Nothing seems to work. Mm-hmm. And, it was so bad, and I tried this, and now I feel lighter. Mm-hmm. I feel like I have more energy. I feel like I have more motivation. I feel like I have purpose again. Like I want to go out and see friends, not just like as a obligatory thing to let them know I'm alive. Like now I'm happy and I actually love life. And I was like, what? Like, how is that? Like, what is this drug? I don't understand.
Right.
And I looked into it a little bit, and I was, I knew like a little bit about the science, but mostly at that point, I was just like, why not? Like, if there's even a chance that this could help me, that this could like help me get to where these people are, I want to try it.
Right.
I tried ketamine infusions, which is where they do it with the IV.
Right.
It's what sucks is that that's not covered by insurance because it's not FDA approved yet.
Right.
Like recently, the nasal spray was
the
approved,
nasal spray,
right?
yes. You still have to go to the office, actually,
Yeah.
to get the nasal spray, and I'm not sure even whether or not there is a procedure developed yet. But I know it came out.
Yeah.
Almost like a few probably weeks before this article came out, or probably a month. So
Yeah,
it's very recent.
I remember getting a notification for that
Right.
a couple days before my first appointment. And I was like, okay, so maybe this
Yeah.
is legit. So, yeah, I guess to just like say a little bit more about my experience with it.
Please.
So I went in for my initial evaluation.
Right.
Basically what the doctor said was, he was an anesthesiologist.
Right.
What he said was that the theory of how ketamine therapy works is that it's effective for treatment-resistant depression. What normal treatments do, like
Medications.
Medications, is they affect levels of neurotransmitters.
Right.
You know, exactly how and, you know, whatever we don't exactly know, but they affect neurotransmitter levels.
Right.
And so he said that the theory is that with chronic depression or, you know, treatment-resistant depression, the issue is not how many neurotransmitters you have. It's like a structural problem.
Right.
So it's not a functional problem. It's a problem with the structure of your brain. Like there are not enough neurons and connections in the area of the brain that are responsible for creating BDNF.
Yeah.
Which can you explain briefly what that is? I forgot.
So BDNF is brain-derived neurotropic factor.
Yes, that's it.
So it's a protein that in humans is encoded by the BDNF gene, which has been identified. And BDNF is a member of what is called neurotrophin, PH, family of growth factors. So the theory is that when there is less BDNF, not enough neurons and neural connections grow, and people who have enough BDNF don't have this issue.
Right. And so what he said is that, you know, again, like the theory is that particularly people who have stressful or traumatic childhood experiences, the stress that's like producing all this cortisone in this like tiny body that's still growing affects how the brain ends up forming.
Exactly.
And makes it more difficult. It just messes up the way the brain is formed in such a way that it makes it, you know, harder to produce this stuff on your own, I guess.
Yes. That's the theory.
That's the theory, yeah. I mean, obviously we don't know for sure, but that's the theory of why ketamine has been seen to be so effective for treatment-resistant depression, where everything else didn't work, but this was like a miracle drug.
Right.
So the way it goes, from my experience, is you do a series of 3 treatments, and then...
Serious how frequently?
Every other day.
Every other day.
It's, I mean, as close together as possible. And then if those work and you start to feel better, then you do another 3 for a total of 6 sessions. Again, like all in the span of 2 weeks, every other day. And I guess like after 6 treatments, you're supposed to be able to feel like the maximum effect.
Yes.
And they've found that if you get more than 6 treatments, it's like, I mean, it's not going to hurt you, but it's not going to really improve anything.
Yeah.
So I went in, and the way that they do it is you sit down in a little chair, and like I got my own room.
Right.
And they chose the ketamine dosage based on my weight, pretty much only that.
Right.
And did the IV thing, and then kind of just like turned the lights down and, you know, left me to, they're like, you should listen to music.
Right.
Do you have headphones? Do you need headphones? Okay, good. Very good recommendation.
Right.
And oh boy, it's such a cool experience.
Did you get high?
Hell yeah.
How did it feel?
Oh my God. It was so fun. And each experience, because I did the full 6 treatments, each one was so different. I don't know exactly why. I think it might have had to do with the different, like, because different nurses, you know, have the IV drip at different speeds.
Well, they're told what to do, actually. So
I don't, So, but it was so cool. I mean, so it definitely felt like a sedative, like, hey.
So can you compare it to any drug experiences someone might have had?
Oxy. It felt like Oxy. Yeah, and again, like what you said, it's like I was present,
Right.
I was aware of everything that was happening. I was listening to music. I was like punching on my phone, like finding songs.
Right.
I felt like super lovey-dovey. So I was sending like gifts to my fiance.
Meaning ordering stuff online?
No,
GIFs, GIF.
yes,
Okay.
GIF.
Yeah,
And
like
being
kisses.
I love you so much.
Right.
Because I was like giddy.
Right. So I hope he got a large supply of ketamine in case he needs to have an experience.
Well, so for one of the treatments, he came with me.
Right.
And it was so nice.
Right.
Because, I was doing my own thing. I had my headphones in.
Right.
But each session, I really wanted to take advantage of it.
Right.
They told me that sometimes people have epiphanies,
Right.
during a session.
Right. When they're high on ketamine.
When they're high on ketamine,
Yeah,
that they have an epiphany. And so
Right.
I was like, oh, that's really cool. Like, I don't know if that's going to happen to me. But so I specifically would, I would put on my music and then I would think about why life is worth living.
Mm-hmm.
And why people enjoy life.
People, you should see Master McMaster's face right now. She looks like a real philosopher. Very serious. Yes.
So each session I would focus on this and
Right.
I would let my mind wander. And, I was high as balls, but I came up with some really good arguments for why life is worth living.
Why?
Arguments that could convince myself.
Could you share a couple of arguments?
Okay, so it might sound kind of stupid, and it might sound like super obvious.
Mm-hmm.
But for where I was, it was not obvious to me.
Uh-huh.
So I guess the idea was that if you are a very depressed person, you might not want to exist. So what's the alternative? Non-existence, right? So there's being or there's not being.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea is then that you choose not being because you don't want to be.
Right.
And so what I sort of started to realize when I was super high and feeling good is that it's not a choice.
What do you mean?
So, you can make a choice to die or something. You
Right.
can make all kinds of choices, but death is not a state of existence.
Mm-hmm.
It's the cessation of existence.
Right.
It's not a state that you can be in
Right.
where you just don't experience pain anymore. It's the absence of all of that.
What you're saying is not trivial, actually. I hope the brains of the internet and everyone and everything else that is listening to us can appreciate how deep the thought is, actually.
Yeah, and
I appreciate
I hope
it, yeah.
I'm not getting too real for people.
Right.
But
Yes.
depression's real. It really affects the way you think. So basically what I kind of arrived at was we are alive. We didn't choose it.
Right.
This is how life is. There are lots of shitty things about life. There are also lots of experiences, opportunities to experience really great things.
Like IV ketamine.
Like IV ketamine.
Right.
And love and pizza.
Yes, about to happen today.
And, when you're really depressed, that stuff doesn't matter because it's hard to enjoy anything.
Right.
But if you can find something to then to help you remember how to enjoy things, and ketamine did that for me. It jump started my brain.
Right.
I guess I sort of came to the idea of why not? Okay, so why is life painful? Why are these things painful? Because they're not the way I want them to be.
Mm-hmm.
Why am I trying to make them something that they're not?
Mm-hmm.
Why am I trying to make life something that it's not? Why can't I just embrace things exactly how they are? Because when you put expectations on things, that's when, it's just setting yourself up for disappointment. So I guess, long story short,
Right.
you have the ability to move throughout this world and experience things, and you are alive. And you'll die eventually, no matter
Right.
what. You're going to die.
Yes. Guess
But-
what? Nobody leaves this planet in this lifetime alive.
Yeah.
Even
but,
if you believe in reincarnation, you'll
Yeah,
die. First
even-
you die. Yes.
Yeah. So, why not try to like make the best of it? Like experience what you can, enjoy things.
Sounds like a total epiphany to me because you sound right now, Master McMaster, like one of the great spiritual leaders when they talk. because the train of thought actually that came to you frequently appears in their speeches and writings.
Okay.
And since you are not into spirituality, meaning like you are not into reincarnations and stuff like that, that's an epiphany. I'm very impressed, and I hope everybody else who is listening to us can appreciate what you just said. Good for you.
Yeah, I haven't really explained it out loud.
Yeah.
So forgive me
Before. No,
if that sounded really awkward. This was all just like a big train of thought in my head.
I mean, I don't know what other people think, and they're welcome to share. We keep telling them that they can, but I can tell you, to me it sounded very profound. I'm very happy you came to this conclusion.
Yeah.
But the infusion lasts for what? For half an hour, for an hour, for how long?
About, like 45 minutes.
Right.
They book, like, the session is supposed to be like an hour because, like, then,
sure, they have to,
they prep you and then, like, afterwards, definitely for a solid, like, 10, 15 minutes.
Right.
It's not as an intensive a high, but you're still, like, pretty high.
Right. For how long?
Like 10, 15 minutes sometimes. Then, like, after that, I would be a little bit, like, kind of groggy, like, a little bit out of it. But again, like, you're still, like, fully aware of everything the whole time.
It would have been cool to do a podcast when you're high. We didn't think about it.
I wonder what that would have been like. I thought about, like, ooh, what if I could bring in, like, one of my philosopher friends and have, like, an existential discussion.
So we should, in the future, put two philosophers on IV ketamine and let them talk to each other. That'd be cool.
That's a really good idea.
Yeah. Let's do it. One philosopher we have already.
Yeah.
So, and it's staying with you, right? So far, so good, right?
Yeah. I mean, after the first couple treatments, I started to feel, like I had more energy.
Right.
Mental energy.
Right.
Like I made plans. I cleaned my apartment willingly because it seemed important.
Right.
And I started to feel like more hopeful. And by the end of it, it's like night and day.
Excellent.
I feel a lot different. And I don't know how long it's supposed to last. I know that they say that you can go back for like boosters,
right?
Like maybe every couple months,
right?
But I don't know. I feel really great.
Excellent. I'm very happy for you.
I mean, I'm not perfect. Like I'm not like 100%. I still have things I need to deal with, obviously. But I mean, I get up in the morning and I I cook food. And I mean, like all these little things that seem so trivial to someone maybe who's never experienced depression. But like wanting to do those things.
Yeah, I hate cooking, so maybe I should take some ketamine. Seriously speaking, though, I'm very happy for you, and thank you for sharing your experience with us. Is there anything else you would like to say before I start sharing my infinite wisdom about how it works and what the research is?
Yeah. So one thing about this experience that, like, if you're listening to this and you're wondering, like, oh, I want to try this.
Right.
So it is expensive and insurance doesn't cover it. But I mean, at the time for me, it was kind of just like what is money if I don't like enjoy life?
Exactly.
It seemed like worth anything. And, not everyone is in a position to do that. But
well, let's say that not everyone values their health in general and the health of their brain in particular that much. A very trivial example that I hate, but it is accurate, is that a trip of a family of 4 to a baseball game is going to cost, give or take, in the neighborhood of $500 if you're lucky. Between the tickets, if you want good tickets, and between all the food, where like one hot dog is $10, and all the diluted beer that people consume, and the trip back and forth, and the parking. Or, for example, somebody is in expensive clothing, expensive cars. So that's everybody's choice. But I think that it's amazing that you made such a good choice because you look marvelous.
Well, thank you. I really do feel a lot better.
Yes, and you look like you look like $100 bill.
That's the nicest thing anyone's ever said to me. I've always wanted that.
Yes, right. I don't remember whose picture is on it. Probably an old fat guy. Right. So is it time to talk about research behind it?
Yeah, so I mean, that's my personal experience with this. But again, I don't really know much about the research and the science behind it. So Dr. Schultz, you can inform us, right?
Yes, I'll try to make it short because actually there's not much information available at this point. So I'll be totally open and tell you that I've heard about ketamine and read about ketamine ever since people started offering the idea of using it as an antidepressant, and was in the cohort of many psychiatrists and neurologists who were extremely skeptical about using an anesthesia drug, which is also like AKA.
A street drug?
Yeah, like
Special K?
Special K, for treatment of depression, especially considering that it has a very high abuse potential. But
Right.
The data is coming out all the time, and your experience is actually, to me, significantly more important than all the data. And then the epiphany came to me after I read an article published in Science magazine on April 12th of this year. So the number...
So,
remember
like a
the
couple
beginning,
days ago?
Yeah, so do you remember this, the beginning of me counting how many authors there were?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, this research was conducted basically at Cornell, and it's an amazing example of how advanced modern technology is. But before I talk about it, just for a second or two, or a minute or two, or maybe five, I'm going to tell you what's going on with the serotonin, the selective serotonin reuptake theory, and all this idea created by the Zoloft commercial, we spoke about it, about chemical imbalance. So since the early 2000s until about 2006, there has been a debate going on in the direction which is the following. And I've been saying it, believe it or not, for the longest time before. It's inconceivable that somebody can just randomly increase levels of any neurotransmitters in the brain, and the brain just takes it. I would dare to say that if you significantly increase or decrease the level of any neurotransmitter across the brain, a person will die. Yes, there is a lot of serotonin in the gut, 90%, because the gut is not the brain, okay? It doesn't care. At any given moment, to the best of our understanding, there could be more or less of anything, any neurotransmitter, in different parts of the brain, depending on what task or tasks, and there are probably billions of different tasks that brain has to deal with every millisecond, which is less than a second, right? 24/7. And people kind of started abandoning the serotonin reuptake theory, and now have been talking more and more about another hypothesis, which is the hypothesis of neuronal proliferation, which we touched on it in the very beginning of our podcast. And the idea here is that for one reason or the other, and whatever reason you've mentioned before, that a child has an unhappy childhood and doesn't have enough neurons in a particular area, it is possible, but it's very difficult to tell what's going on because so far, most of the research, if not all of the research, is done in mice. So one of the researchers gave probably more than one interview. It's Dr. Liston, who actually is mentioned last on the list, but seems to be a very nice young scientist. He says, rightfully so, for example, I heard his interview on NPR, that we don't know that mice have depression. Right? So depression needs to be induced.
How do you induce depression?
They give them a hormone of stress, corticosterone, so CORT, corticosterone, right? In drinking water for quite a few days.
That's supposed to be the idea with the childhood brain development.
Right. And it makes them depressed. And the depression is assessed by their behavior. I don't want to make it too complicated, but as a baseline, they make them run through maze, and then they see how they run. They look at, believe it or not, at the position of their tail. So the target that we are interested in is still the prefrontal cortex. It sounds unbelievable, but they implant a prism
Prism.
in the head of a mouse, which the mouse is very small,
How is
and
that?
use laser microscope to view in real time in a mouse that is alive what's going on with their dendrite development. So just to remember, just to remind to our listeners, a neuron, which is still considered to be a functional element of the brain, we have, some people say 100 billion, some people say 50 billion. To me, it sounds crazy. No matter how many, 50 or 100, it's a lot of neurons. So they have two important things for us to remember. One axon, that's an outgrowth that brings the signal away from the neuron to other neurons, and another one is a dendrite. Dendrites have spines on them. A spine, it looks like a little mushroom. So it has a head, and then it has an attachment part, which is narrow, like a leg, right? And so imagine that there is an outgrowth, which is a line, and it has many different, these little mushrooms. That's where a synapses to an axon happens. So one dendrite can have multiple connections with multiple other axons from other neurons. I don't know that it's fair to say the more you have, the smarter you are, the more you have, the less depressed you are, but what has been noticed that the prefrontal cortex situation is probably extremely important in the way we feel, depressed or not depressed. Just to remind you, prefrontal cortex also has been sold to us as a place with which we think. Mm-hmm. So after they expose them to CORT, corticosterone, for an extended period of time and drinking water, the mice become depressed, and the spine, dendritic spine proliferation, is significantly decreased. Meaning, if first you would come and see thousands and thousands of these little like buds, right? You see significantly less. And then when they give them ketamine, it restores the proliferation of the spines. So that's one finding, which is totally stunning. Another interesting finding is that even before the buds begin to proliferate, because it takes up to probably 12 hours for them to start, the behavior changes. So mood improves before, and the explanation is that ketamine revives the connections, right? So the connections that, in quotes, are dead, unquote, are restored even before we can see that the buds are proliferating. So, for example, there was a connection and then something happened. It's not functioning. We can see it, but it's probably still there, right? The axon is attached to the dendrite.
Right.
So ketamine does something that allows this connection to start working. So networks begin to restore.
Cool.
So it's totally amazing. Like, think about implanting a prism in a little teeny tiny brain of a mouse, and it's still alive, and watching what's going on. Of course, it's more sophisticated than that. I'm blown away by this. And
we can't prevent train delays on the subway, but we
right.
figured out how to get a
so
fucking
I'm showing
laser prism.
Master
in a rat.
McMaster. So these are the buds that I was talking about, the spines.
Oh yeah, okay.
So maybe you can describe them better. They look like broccoli, right? If you've ever seen the way broccoli is sold in Trader Joe's, for example, it's usually a stem, and stem has a lot of broccolis on it, right? Doesn't it look like that?
Yeah, it's like a stalk
Right.
with like a bunch of little things coming off of it.
So it's a very exciting situation, and I'm very glad that Master McMaster experienced it and we were able to talk to you. But now I'm in a situation when I might need ketamine.
Why is that, Dr. Schultz?
Well, maybe you can tell us.
Yeah, so in like I said, the past few months have been quite a journey for me. And one thing that I think you can kind of glean from my experience with ketamine therapy is that it kind of inspired me to focus on like what is great about life. And so I have actually decided to take a bit of a sabbatical, a little bit of a break from work, just to like kind of focus on my mental health for a little bit.
Which I totally approve as a human being, and I totally understand as a psychiatrist, and I totally understand it as a partner, your partner in crime when it comes to the podcast.
Yeah,
So
sadly,
it's like very good for you, but makes me sad because we had this amazing, a little bit more than a year together, working on different projects. And this podcast, from what I hear from other people, not only myself, is totally amazing.
it's
Yes.
been so great.
Just for people to understand, for example, when you go on our website, and I hope you continue because...
Braintech.nyc.
Yeah, we are going to keep the podcast alive, and the podcast's website is...
Brainstorm9000.com.
Yeah, so brainstorm9000.com was completely and totally created, the website, by Jane McMaster, Master McMaster, single-handedly, right?
Yes.
Your head and so many things came to the fruition when we were together, but I'm very supportive of your decision. Not that I want you to leave, of course, but I remember immigrating from the Soviet Union for basically exact same reason. I wanted to start life in a different situation, which wasn't as restrictive as it was for me, not for everybody else. Then in 1989, the end of 88 when I came here. I came in December of 88. So I support you, and I'll support you each and any way I can. And of course, we are still friends. We are going to have pizza today.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my God. I'm so excited.
So because you need to celebrate, and I need some medication for my depression. So since I cannot have ketamine, at least I have pizza.
Yep.
So I wish you best of luck, and
Thank you.
I guess we both believe that this podcast is going to continue on.
Absolutely.
You are going to hear it in the next episode, and we probably have a surprise for you.
Yeah.
Okay, so keep your brains open, and let's celebrate Master McMaster's amazing epiphany-driven recovery.
Thank you, Dr. Schultz.
Goodbye, Earthlings.
And goodbye, Earthlings. Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Brainstorm 9000. If you like us, love us, or marginally tolerate us, hey, go ahead and subscribe, rate, and give us a review on iTunes or Stitcher or wherever the hell you listen to your podcasts.